Something that looks like krill. They have like twice as many rods and cones in their eyes as we do.
Yeah.
And so the amount of colors they can see is just a magnitude more.
Yeah, I think I'm crazy. So I want to get back to talking about your future, your guys' future. So, what kind of things do you guys value, like hold close to you, or like you will value in the future? And do you like, when you plan out your future, do you shape it to like kind of reflect those values? So I want to kind of explain what I mean by that. When I talk about my values, so like I hold like legacy and like wisdom close to me. Like those are my values.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about legacy, I form my future to kind of like reflect that. So like for example, I want to have kids. I want to have this podcast take off, so I have a legacy, and I'm gonna shape my future around that. So like, what things do you guys value, and how, if you guys are currently, how do you guys shape your future to reflect those values?
Can I go to the bathroom? Because Braden was like, "Don't finish your bottle like right away, because you're gonna have to pee." And I was like, "Nah, that's bullshit, bro.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna pee."
I finished a while back, but yeah, first door on the left,
All right,
upstairs. Is that question too hard? Do you know how to answer it?
Just like, what do you
There's
value?
no such thing as a
Yeah, like
question
what do
that's
you
too hard.
what do you value, and do you shape? If you do shape your future, how do you do it? How do you shape your future to reflect that said value?
I think a lot of it comes with like experience, just like being able to experience different things. I know my coach at college, I'll probably reference him a million times, but one of his biggest things was just like experience is your greatest teacher, and I feel like that's so true. You don't really know what you want to get into until you actually do it, and then you're like, oh, I'm actually kind of interested in that. Like in high school, I would have never imagined that I'm into like philosophy and logic and like postmodernism and these like different kind of ideas. But I just like to go around different podcasts, listen to different people, learn about different things, and just learn more about society, learn more about philosophical principles, learn more about science, like Andrew Huberman or whatever. Just listen to his podcast and whatever. But I think going back to kind of just like what you value, I think in order to know what you value, you have to experience experiences. When you go to college, that's an experience, and you'll like after a year, you'll probably be a completely different person. Like when you go to Creighton, you'll be probably pretty different by the end of it. You'll be the same Elijah that we know, but it'll be a different Elijah where you would have had more experiences and learned a little bit more about yourself, what you like. And I don't really think I knew that like in high school. Like as 18-year-old, you don't really know what exactly you want to do, and then you do it, and then you're like, oh, I kind of like that, I kind of don't like that. So as far as what you value, I think finding out what you like and just go for whatever it is that you want to get to the top of, and just do that. You know, like for myself, I did a year of just like exercise science studies at North Central, and I got injured in this process and probably would want to go into like PT or something, because I had a couple PTs and they weren't super great, and
You want to do it right?
I want to do it right. Okay. You know, and I've and it's like, well, that sounds like the cliche physical therapist kind of story, like gets injured, then decides that they want to go. You know, it's kind of like a hero arc type thing. Like it's really just like cliche and whatever. But honestly, it's bothered the heck out of me. And what's bothered me more is that not enough people know about sports like physical therapy. Like you look at professionals, they get an MRI in like a week. Damn. Right? Like Matthew Centrowitz, those types of they will find out if they have a stress fracture in like a week or two. And it's like, we don't have any systems in place where somebody could go and do that. Like for me, for MRIs, I literally had to wait like a month and a half, 2 months. Yeah. And it's like, dude, this is insane. Like it took so long. People aren't really, especially athletes, I think, are disregarded a lot of the time. Physical therapists in school aren't trained on how to train athletes. It's more of like athletic trainers kind of get that, but they just don't get the knowledge base like physical therapists do. So I think just going way back to the question, because I kind of got off.
I was like, yeah, what's
Yeah,
the
no,
question?
I think you answered
I was like, did we
it.
change the
Yeah.
question?
'Cause you said that you value, well, you kind of like value, number one, like searching for what you like to do. And also, I don't know if you meant to say this, but like you kind of said that you value exercise and like physical activity in some way.
Right.
So those are the two things that you value, and then you went on to explain that your future is shaped so that you want to be like a physical therapist.
Right.
Which what led you into that was getting injured and then them doing it wrong.
It's like finding what you value.
Yeah, so you found out that like you value like physical activity, and then like I'd also assume helping people and
Right.
like, you know, like stuff like that.
Right. No, that's pretty accurate assessment. For sure.
So yeah, that's how I think you answered it, which I think was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Calvin.
Alright, so what was the question?
So the question is, what sort of things do you value, and how do you shape your future to
What do I value?
kind of work on that?
Work towards. Because you said you focus on legacy. I used to focus on legacy. I used to think that was really important. But honestly, my mind has changed significantly, I would say, in the last year-ish. That, I don't know, man. I feel like life is a bit too precious to want to focus on extending it through a legacy. And what I mean by that is if you're like eating a really good dish, and you're constantly thinking about wanting more of the dish rather than spending your time enjoying what the dish has to offer, then even if you keep getting more of the same dish, you're never going to be able to get the most quality out of it. And so I kind of focus, I think for most people, I think it's just human nature to focus on relationship and helping people. And that's honestly probably the most fulfilling thing. That's why family dynamic leads people to be the happiest. Because even if you look at the most impoverished people throughout history, even if you look at the times that people have struggled the most, and you look at other third world countries, and you look at their people that they have, a lot of them typically they were still somewhat happy. There was one, no,
Really?
they're not just somewhat happy. I forgot what statistic I saw, but there was one country, I forgot which country it was, but as far as GDP, they're like 180th in the world, which is basically the bottom of the barrel. But if you look at the mean happiness and well-being, they're top 10. And in the US is honestly kind of the opposite. And you wonder why that is. And because over there they have a lot better of a family structure, and they focus on their relationships, and they're kind to one another, and a lot of them they work a little bit less, and they don't have as many anxieties and things to worry about. You know, it's a lot more of a simpler life. You know, so if you think about, because why are people's perceptions of paradise, them sitting on like a beach with like a cocktail and like palm trees? Because there's nothing to worry about. People's ideas of paradise aren't making billions of dollars and leaving legacies and becoming like huge public figures and having their faces on billboards and stuff. It's just relaxing with the people you love in the place you want to be. It's comfortable enough, you know. You don't have to have the best clothes or the best house or the best everything. You could live out of like a bungalow, but as long as you're well enough off to not have to constantly worry about starving, you know, and you have good relationships, then those are the people who savor the moment. So that's ideally what I'm looking for. That's why I'm going to college. A lot of people ask me, it's like, what are you gonna do with the philosophy degrees? I could probably do a little bit more with a math degree than I can with a philosophy degree, but I don't want to be a lawyer. And that's like the only thing that people go into philosophy to be, is a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer, but why am I studying philosophy if I'm not going to make money with it? It's because I just want to like learn, because that's just life, you know? I could form my own ideas, and I could formulate a better way to learn, or I could form a better way to live than focus on the material and focus on making $100,000 a year. Because you don't need $100,000 a year. If you're living by yourself and you're making like $4,000 a year, you're fine. No more money than that is gonna lead you to be more happy. But honestly, it's probably gonna be the opposite, because to make more than that, you're gonna have to work more, and working more takes your time away from the things that you actually enjoy. And it stresses you out, because now you have to rush the things you enjoy to the point where you no longer enjoy them. If I only have an hour to get in a run, I'm not going to enjoy that run nearly as much as if I had 5 hours to get in a run, and I could get it in any time in those 5 hours, and I could take my time with it. You know, I could stop, by a bench in a park, and I could sit down for a while, look at the trees, look at the birds, say hi to people, take some pictures on my way, keep going, keep running, come back, stretch, hang out with people, go and like drink some tea or whatever, and that run, overall, the whole portion of the run might have taken me like 3 hours, but I enjoyed that way more than if I had done the same distance and gotten the same aerobic benefit as if I had rushed it. So I'm not trying to rush my life. There's plenty of time to not rush. There's no race, which is ironic because I run. So I'm not calling it a race, but it's kind of, it's weird that people treat life as a race, and I run and I don't treat life as a race, because it's not a race. I'm just here to learn. I'm just trying to get more wise. I'm just trying to have good relationships with people. I'm trying to make an impact on people's lives. You look at the happiest people before they die. It's not the Bezoses of the world. It's like the grandmothers, and it's like they just in a good family and stuff, and they just die peacefully. They weren't doing much the last 40 years of their life. They were just sitting there cooking or knitting or whatever, right? But they have their family around them, and they might have friends around them, So I'm just trying to keep my family and my friends close, and just talk with them as much as I can, and hang out and enjoy life without purposefully trying to worry about too much. Because I have a lot to worry about. I think about things all the time. I do try to leave a legacy, but more in the way of things that I enjoy, right? So I make music, and I release it. I just started releasing it, but I make it because I enjoy it, and I talk about what I want to talk about, and I talk about my worries, and I talk about the future, and I'm talking about life and stuff, and I just like making it because it feels like it feels a little bit more like I'm scratching into my own head than if I was just thinking about the stuff. Because I feel like just thinking about things, it's
kind of like an outlet for you.
Exactly. Just thinking about things, you don't make that much progress. But writing it down, now you can start where you left off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
And running is good too, because running slows your life down. There's a reason I don't sprint, bro. There's a reason I do distance, because I'm not trying to because when you're not running, you're either on your phone, or you're working, or you're watching something, and your mind is just distracted. But I lost my earbuds like 3 weeks ago, and so I don't listen to music. I used to listen to music on my run sometimes, or actually a good amount of time.
Especially when you're alone, right?
Especially when only when I'm alone.
Yeah.
I don't do it when I'm with other people. But when I'm alone, I would listen to music on my runs almost all the time. But now that I lost my earbuds, and I'm just out there by myself, I'm like, it's like you're able to breathe. You wake up from something.
I've heard it. Okay, so I've done that a few times. It's similar to like a form of like meditation, because you're running and you're just in your head.
Just in your head.
Even when I've gotten in the habit now. Whenever I go for a run, I listen to a podcast, and I mean it's not the same thing, but it makes me think like while I'm running, which I like. When I was listening to music, I don't really pay attention to the music as much as I'm just kind of in my head and I'm thinking about shit. Like I have a problem where when I'm alone, I just contemplate shit. Like, why did this happen? Why is this going on? Why is like certain things going on? What, like exactly what we're talking about? What do I value? How am I going to, I think like way too many steps ahead. Like I'm out here thinking like, how am I going to build the foundation? Like how am I going to build the foundation to have the family that I want to have? Like I'm just out of high school and I'm thinking about this shit.
I don't think about.
And I think about like
how to worry about that too much.
Yeah,
because it's natural to try to worry about that.
You know what I mean? Like I don't. I've mentioned this a few times on my podcast. I don't like think, oh, I'm gonna get a job that I enjoy, some shit like that. I'm like, what job can I get right now that's going to be the most beneficial for the family that I want to have? Because I feel like if I have a family, I'm gonna experience fulfillment later in life. I'm not thinking about like happiness now, which I feel like a lot of people value more and put first than having that fulfillment later. Because a lot of people go out now and they start partying and they start doing shit.
I think it's how you do it. Like going out and partying and doing stuff like that. It's like there's probably better ways to spend your time, being productive and and learning. But if you're not focused on making on having a 6-figure job, that's also not bad, because like high school was great, dude. Like it kind of sucked, but running in high school, those are memories that are gonna stick with me for life, for sure. And if instead of that, I was like focused on like learning how to code, so I could like become a programmer and then make money. It's like I wouldn't have had any of those experiences. I mean, sure, I might have learned how to code out of it, but I'm good. I'm good, bro. I liked how it went.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, no, like what you said before about like the meal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how you worded it, but dude, that picked my brain, bro.
I
never like, so I had my specific way of thinking, and you like picked my brain, and I rethought about it, and I'm like, holy fuck, maybe I was wrong the whole time.
There was a way that that Buddhist philosophers typically think about. So there's a huge emphasis in Buddhism to eliminate desire, essentially, but it's sort of paradoxical in how it works, because the desire to eliminate desire in and of itself is a desire, right? So how do you eliminate desire?
And maybe what you want in the end. So if you want to eliminate desire, and then what you desire after you eliminate desire is also a desire, right?
Well, once you
know what I mean?
You can't eliminate desire by wanting to eliminate desire.
Because that's a desire.
Because it's a desire, so you're stuck.
So
how do you reach nirvana in that sense? So this is how they explain it. This was like an analogy, and I was like, I like this analogy a lot. You essentially exhaust yourself. So I think I told you this analogy before, but anyways, it's like pretend you're on a beach, and we do this with things that are like good and bad. Like some emotions you have and some feelings you have are good, and other ones are bad, and you don't want the bad ones and you want the good ones, and you're constantly chasing after the good feelings and the good meal, and then you're trying to, and the good times in life, and you're trying to ignore the bad stuff, and you're always, when you're in the bad, you're always thinking about, damn, I wish it was good. And when you're in the good, you're constantly thinking about, damn, I want more of this, and trying to plan how to get more of it, right? So they use the analogy of, so pretend you're a guy on a beach, and you arbitrarily, all these emotions, the good and the bad and stuff, That's just essentially in your head. Those don't objectively exist. Those feelings are just part of your conscious experience. There's no way to prove in their reality. So it's almost like a delusion. And so, like, pretend there's a guy on a beach and he arbitrarily, just like we do, determines that some of the waves coming onto the beach are good and some of the waves coming onto the beach are bad. And just like we do, constantly tries to like force the bad waves to stay off the beach and keep the good waves on the beach. But that's not how an ocean works. The waves come and then they go, and then they come and then they go, and then they come and then they go. You can't force some waves to stay on the beach and force some waves to stay off the beach. So after a whole day of just constantly trying to like grab at the water and hold the good ones close to him so he could continuously feel the good ones, and then force the bad ones away so he doesn't have to feel them, he exhausts himself and then he lays on the beach and then realizes how beautiful the ocean was the whole time. You know, it's like they're just waves. They come and then they go, and there's a nice sun, there's a nice beach. This is just part of life. Like, there's nothing really to try to force. You don't need to force life. You just go at your own pace. You just go. That's why I love running easy paces, because it's like I never look at my watch anymore on runs. I just go whatever pace I want to go.
Yeah, and sometimes that makes you go fast.
If it's fast, it's good. If it's fast, it is what it is. If it's slow, it is what it is, because there's no determination on what's good and what's not good. It's just, I just like running, and I just like enjoying life, and I'm not trying to like, I'm just trying to savor it, you know, savor the moments, because the moments are finite. Eventually, no matter how long no longer how bad you want to leave a legacy that'll outlive you, your moments are finite. So eventually your legacy's gonna run out. And then what's your legacy? Once your legacy runs out, you no longer have a legacy. So the effort that you put in to try to build a legacy that's inevitably gonna run out, you could have spent that effort trying to savor the moment you had in the first place.
Shit, bro. Damn. You're making me rethink a lot of shit, bro. Holy fuck.
That's how my brother thinks.
What?
I said that's how my brother thinks. Cause he's been through like a lot of shit in his life, and now he kind of turned into a bit of a hippie.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just trying to breathe, bro.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get through it, and he just wants to enjoy his life. He told me he wants to get a log cabin, and he retire out there.
Yeah.
And he likes nature. He likes going for walks. He likes poetry. He writes and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's just simple, and that's what makes people happy.
I don't know if you guys listened to the Morrison episode, but he was talking about literally like the same thing, about living in a log cabin out in the woods and having like ATVs and like 4-wheelers, and it's like living like out in the middle of nowhere. He builds the house, shit like that. So half of me wants a life like that. The other half is like, bro, I just want to have.
And honestly,
I want to be like wealthy, you know.
You'll do good for your family too.
Part of me, like, so, fuck.
Because you don't need to be well. Because
that's
you know how many successful families just fall apart because of internal drama and just like, because no matter how wealthy you are, you're still gonna have problems.
But that's how like.
But if you're a good father, character-wise,
what I want to explain is how I want my like family dynamic to work in the future is I want to be able to like protect and provide for my family, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the best way to do that is for right now is through money, but especially for my wife, because I like that's how I view like male female dynamic. Like I want to provide for like my wife.
Yeah.
My kids are maybe a different story. I want my kids to struggle, because I think that's the best way for them to like grow up. And if they're struggling, then they'll come out and they'll be stronger. You know what I mean? I don't want them to be too well off to the point where they're spoiled and then they don't work for shit. Yeah. So I want them to like still.
There's a lot of different types of struggle though, and some of it's
like I want them to understand like what hard work gets them, and to the point where like I'm not just gonna hand them shit. That's what I mean.
Instilling
I'm not
values into them.
I want them to understand.
It's like
have
teaching them a
value.
lesson versus giving them the answers to the homework.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not gonna give them everything. I might give them tips on how to get shit, but I'm not gonna be like, yo, it's your 3rd birthday, I'm gonna give you like fucking I don't know, like
A
something
Mercedes or something.
Yeah, like a Mercedes. You
It's
see
your
like all
3rd
those
birthday
people,
and I'm giving you a Mercedes.
yeah,
God
shit like
damn,
that.
bro, you got
I'm not gonna
rich.
be like that. I'm not gonna, like, I know there's a lot of like super rich people that just like
Well, that's just,
like,
that's just them ignoring their children.
Yeah,
Essentially, they're like giving them money to shut up.
Not even that, like they're doing it for the attention that they get from like social media and shit.
That too. They look like a good parent because they're giving them stuff, but it's
I
don't care about looking
at
like
the
a
end
good
of the
parent.
day, their kids are not going to value anything.
I care about being a good parent.
Yeah.
Like as of right now, I kind of want to have kids. My sister doesn't want to have kids. My brother doesn't want to have kids. I kind of want to have kids just because I feel like I can make some good people. You know,
Yeah.
I just want to improve. If I could put some good people into the world, that can have a positive impact, then I'm having a positive impact in the world.
I feel.
And so I would just pay a lot of. It doesn't have to be through funds, because at some point, you know, like I said, it's like more money doesn't bring you happiness. Once you're well enough off, you're good.
Yeah,
you focus the rest of your energy on just being a part of their lives, enjoying moments with them, teaching them things, explaining things to them. Because I see a lot of parents that they just don't explain the world to them, so then the children end up going into the world like underprepared for what it is that other people are talking about and stuff. But I just want to like be super engaging with my children.
I want to like over prepare them so like they're super successful. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna, and it really also depends on their gender too, because it's a different world depending on like what gender you are. Like the males, you know, I'm gonna show them like, you know, all this hard work shit, but I also want like the girls, depending on like how society is in the future, because you know it's very hard to tell. I want like if I have a girl, I'm gonna be like, you know, you really gotta know, like, you know, don't go out at night, like when it's real late. Don't go out by bars and shit like that. And also kind of teach her how to defend herself to some extent. You know what I mean? And also like, I don't know if I should say this, but I might also teach her like how to use a gun and shit like that, just in case. Like as a father, I'd feel way better if she knew how to use a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a lot more important to just teach them this stuff, because because I know a lot of parents who just like, they just lock up the gun, they don't even show them their kids.
Exactly.
And I'm like, no, dude.
And they'll know like
if you want to play, if you're gonna touch the gun, okay, let me be there. We'll shoot together. I don't care. We'll go outside. We'll go in the backyard.
Better. Like I'd feel better if they knew like the safety shit.
If you ever want to know about the gun, just let me know, and then we'll go out and we'll shoot together, and we'll have a good time. It'll be fun.
Shit like that. And I think they'll
eliminates
have
the curiosity, so they know what to do.
Yes, exactly.
Because curiosity, that's exactly what killed the cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Literally, probably.
Literally, probably.
So, do you have anything to add to that when it comes to like legacy, having a family? Do you have any like philosophical shit to add to?
Probably just to the last point. There's never been a time where a 5'4" woman could take down a 6'5" guy.
Yeah.
Unless you're
So
good at
teaching them
jiu-jitsu.
how to shoot. Well,
But then you don't know what the guy is. Guy can have.
yeah, and ground game is like kind of sketchy if it's like a street fight, you know, whatever. But there's never been any time in history where that kind of situation could happen. So I think it's valuable. I think teaching your kids basic objective morality, you know, teaching them what's right, what's wrong, these kinds of things is extremely important for helping them build their philosophy. You know, like sometimes like I'll sit down with my dad and we'll just have conversations, and it'll just be about like him when he was younger, or like when he was my age, what he was doing and the struggles that he went through.
Yeah.
And it's like how he's been able to create his life philosophy, I think is really, really interesting, and how he wanted to raise his family and getting away from certain people who were toxic and having our family. And I think there's like just a lot of value in that. And even like, even just like, I guess like religious values is like a very important thing. Like we were raised Catholic when we were younger, but it teaches you very, very basic things about just being a good person, being the best person that you can be for, you know, the sake of God. And I think there's a lot of importance in that. And I think there's a lot of security in that too, because when you're older, you kind of start to like question things, but then you're like, I just gotta trust God.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's such a like, I know it's kind of controversial, but I feel like it's for some people it is though. For like, you know, it's like the few things that you can't talk about is sex, religion, and whatever else. You know, it's like those are the things that are off limits to talk about in like most professional settings. But
Yes.
I think
You can talk about all of that here.
right,
Yeah.
and I just think that religion is just such a huge part in like a kid's like life growing up, because it's like if they're not believing in God, then what are they relying on? You know, they're relying on the government, they're relying on all these other things that are
Like TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah,
You're,
shit like that.
I know there's like something, there's something like either in the Quran or it's like an Islamic kind of thing where it's like if you're not believing in God, other things in your life will become your God, right? Running becomes your God. School becomes your
Yeah.
God. Your work becomes your God. So something is God in your life, whether you like to admit it or not.
In the Bible, they call those
False gods.
fake idols.
I-
Or,
it's like-
idols, false idols.
Idolatry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
idolatry.
Idolatry, whatever they call it.
Idolatry.
So-
I don't know. I wouldn't say I rely on God to give me my morality. I probably.
I think so. What my mom taught me is that when it comes to morality, you get that. That's called like your soul. So like if your soul is what gives you morality. It's kind of like you might have like developed it and like fine tuned it, but when you're born, especially if you're, or I don't want to say like especially if you're Christian, but everyone is born with a soul, right? So everybody has like their basic morality that they have, and that's why like everywhere everybody has like laws and shit, and they're all based on like everybody having a soul. Everybody has like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
no,
where
I
that's
know
where
what you
laws came from. They came from
in the U.S. anyways. That's why there's a focus on personal freedom, personal identity, personal
Yeah.
responsibility. That's why when you do something wrong, they don't arrest your whole family. They arrest you.
exactly. Yeah, and
But
it's
that's
the
not
same-
the case for every
It's
culture.
the same thing like
And that's not the case for every country.
yeah, because
That's the case here
yeah.
and a lot of the Western
It's-
world and a lot of the places where the church is.
It's very
having
interesting.
influence.
I want to say when it comes to raising kids and like teaching them morality and different values, I'd say so the number one thing for me would be definitely religion. Religion's number one, because you know, having that background, even if they read the Bible, they're gonna get like some morality out of that, and definitely like some values, like having a family. God is very important, and you know, like all of that stuff. But I'd also say, I mentioned this previously in another podcast, that if you put your kids in martial arts, I think martial arts is one of like the top things that you can put them in to teach them
Respect for other
not
people.
only morality, but it teaches you so many values,
Yeah.
like perseverance, respect, responsibility, self-control. All like it all comes together. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any other sport that really emphasizes any of that like a martial art does.
Yeah, martial arts teaches you how to be a good person, a gentle person, but somebody who has the strength to do what's right.
Yes. So in martial arts or in Taekwondo, after every master's testing, they have this thing called the sword ceremony, and they talk about how like a sword, it can destroy you, but it can also protect you. So you have to be kind of like a sword. You have to be in one moment. Who is it that said that like you have to be able to? A man has to be able to kill a person in a day and also hold a baby in the same day. So you have to be able to be like a vicious. You have to be able to protect yourself, and you have to be able to protect the people that you love, yet also be like the kind, loving father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You understand that?
Yeah, that's two parts of the same coin.
That concept. Yeah, you have
you know who said that? You know who said that?
Who was
Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. It's crazy.
And that responsibility involves having a better moral, stronger moral foundation included in you. Because you can't be too easily subject to temptation and greed and jealousy and all these negative things that are more okay if you don't have the power to assert these things onto other people. But if you are a strong person and you're still subject to these moral flaws, then you're doing a lot of damage to a lot of people. And that's why you need the responsibility to be able to control whatever it is that God gave you.
Not only that, you need discipline, I'd say. Because if you don't have, you need discipline and self-control go hand in hand. Because if you aren't disciplined, number one, okay, let's say like you're not, let's say you are disciplined. So this is how discipline works. You feel a certain way, but you still do your work, right? Mm-hmm. So you feel like shit, or maybe you feel sad. An undisciplined person would say, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym because I feel this way. A disciplined person will, because it's number one, that's like their habit, and that's what they do, and they're disciplined to do that. So a disciplined person will not act on emotion. It's the same thing with self-control. So yeah, you have to be able to hold you have to be able to not act out in emotion. I think that's, I don't know where I was going with that. I forgot what I was saying.
The need comes after the want.
Yeah.
Like the need has to come first.
Well, it's
before
essentially
the
you have to. It's the same thing as looking out for other people, but you're looking out. In the example that you used, you're looking out for your future self.
Yeah.
Because you know that if you don't do what you need to do right now, your future self's going to be mad at what you did in the past.
Exactly.
So you have to constantly. The idea of discipline and the idea to be always disciplined is the idea to never focus on yourself right now. Because the things that you need right now are not of importance to your overall health and your overall fulfillment. Because pleasure doesn't make people happy. Or pleasure doesn't make people long-term happy. Fulfillment makes people happy.
Exactly.
And you don't get fulfillment just from pleasure. You get fulfillment from progress.
Exactly.
Essentially.
I want to dive into. So that was a big rabbit hole right there. Sort of. It's such a real long tangent. I love that conversation.
Yeah.
I'll make a few clips out of that, but I want to get into a more existential reality rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay.
So
that's our bread and butter.
How would you guys define reality if you had to?
How do we define reality?
How do you define reality? Like
There's a lot of ways to define reality. There's a subjective reality, there's an objective reality.
So how I would define reality would be, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd say all the facts. Everything. So what's a fact? I'll explain. So okay. What I had like an argument with somebody on the internet about how, like, what reality is. So we were talking about, he was saying, so if a blind person doesn't see anything, his reality is that there's, like, everything's black and he just feels stuff, right? And I'm like, no, that's not reality, that's a perception.
Yeah.
Right? So his perception is that things are black, but a person that can see has another perception, right? So my thing is, I think that reality is everything that's, like, around us. It's all the facts. It's everything. It's like truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's one reality that we are all in.
Like an objective.
So you're talking about objective reality.
I might have defined that on my own, but I didn't know. I didn't know the word for that. But I would say, like,
subjective is like what other people think.
Yeah.
Objective is like the
subjective.
Subjective
by definition is just whatever. Well, from your perspective, it's just whatever you see. That's your
Yeah.
subjective reality.
Yeah, so I
Whatever
think
you feel,
I
that's your
think
subjective reality.
there are people that are starting to think that that's like actual reality. You know what I mean? So I like
Well,
if
it's about as
something
good as you could get, honestly.
if something happens on the other side of the planet, like a genocide that you don't know about, does that mean that that didn't happen? What I'm trying to say is that it did, obviously.
Right.
So
right.
we all live in the same reality. It's I don't know how to explain it.
And yet none of
You know
us
what I
have
mean?
access to it.
It's
Because our realities, nobody has access to objective reality. Objective reality is a complete mystery to us. Truth is just a complete mystery to us. We
It's-
don't know what anything looks like because we are bound by the physical laws of our body. Our brains are only so big.
yeah.
Though they're pretty smart, or their brains are only so big, we have 5 major senses: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. And there's significantly more than that. We're not bats. We don't have echolocation. Does that mean
Yeah.
echolocation doesn't exist? No. But how many humans have echolocation? None. Because we're not born with that sense, you know. And neither, even the things that we do determine, like our sight is pretty reliable. It's our best sense. The most amount of energy goes into our sight over any other one of our senses. But if you're considering objective reality, then you would have to consider you would have to consider the smell of something that could smell better than us, the taste of something that could taste better than us, or taste better than us, hearing of things that could hear better than us. You'd essentially need to have Superman plus a potential infinite amount of other senses that we don't even know that we don't have.
What you're talking about is observing, like if you observed that.
Because
What I'm
just
talking
because we
about
can't-
what's already there.
No, I know,
So,
but just
you know what I
because
mean?
just because you think you have access, like especially colors. I love using colors as an example because I've had this conversation with people. Colors aren't real. Colors are a measurement of wavelength, but the difference in the size of the wavelength of the light that's refracting, that's going into your eyes, has no indication on whether something should be blue or something should be red. Those blue and red is just, it's just in their head. There's like, and we could all agree, all 8 billion people on this planet can agree that the thing that we're looking at is in fact red. Does that make it true? True enough for us, for our playing field, but that doesn't make it objectively true. If there was a God, he would not be seeing in colors.
So that'd be a perspective, that'd be the human perspective.
There's
No?
yeah, there's a human perspective.
So the human perspective would be that it's red.
But
But
you
maybe a different animal is different
You-
color. But what you're explaining is also another perspective. What I'm
you don't
explaining,
create, or you don't observe reality. You
Yeah.
create your reality. The only reality that you see is what's going on in your brain, and your brain has no
That's subjective, no?
access. Yeah, that's objective reality. But that's the only reality that we can talk about, because objective reality, who knows what that is? Our perspective is far too limited to be able to experience anything beyond our subjective reality. Because, for example, one of my favorite animals, I love these animals, octopus. They're so freaking cool because just the mere fact that they're mildly intelligent is wild. Because if you think about objective, or if you think about intelligent animals, you think about us, but you also think about the next closest animals that you would think about are fairly close to us on the evolutionary timeline. Usually you're looking at other mammals. You know, pigs are pretty smart, elephants are pretty smart, dolphins are pretty smart. They're all mammals. Monkeys or chimps are pretty smart. Other apes are pretty smart. They are extremely close to us on the evolutionary timeline. If you look at octopus, and you know, there are people who study octopus, and they are aware that how intelligent octopus are. They're very curious, and they're intelligent in other ways that humans aren't, because there's a bunch of ways to measure intelligence. It's not just like an IQ. There's like 8 or 9 different like vectors of intelligence. And well, for example, other apes have significantly better short-term memory than we do. I don't know if you ever saw the video of the ape. You know the short-term memory test of like the grid of squares, and some of them light up, and then you have to like, and they'll flash for like a second,
you, like,
and you have to
tap it,
remember it.
yeah.
And so I did that, and I could get up to like 12, like lights
different
or whatever,
patterns.
and then you see videos of apes doing it, and they could go to like 30.
What the fuck?
Dude, it's like flashes for like like a quarter second, and they're like beep beep boop 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 boop, and
That's
you're like,
crazy.
that thing is way more intelligent than us, but only in that single vector.
But that would be memory, no?
That's a
What's-
part. That's a part. If you didn't have memory, you wouldn't be intelligent. So it's all part of intelligence. Intelligence is.
It depends on how you measure intelligence.
It is, but I'm saying if you measure intelligence in all the ways that you can measure intelligence, and then take the average, or not take the average, but you look at like you almost look like it at like the where you put your like skill points, you know, it's all an intelligence skill point, but you can put your skill points into different things. And if you look at octopus, they have a weird intelligence system. But they also have a really weird looking brain, because their brain has actually a good amount of neurons. If you look at the human brain, we have about 2 billion neurons, and if you look at an octopus, which is significantly smaller, but because it has a brain that has a few tens of millions of neurons, but it also have neurons inside of it, each and every one of its tentacles, and the total amount of neurons that add up in an octopus is around like 500 million, which is staggeringly high. And if you think about the implications of having, it essentially has a different brain in each one of its tentacles, and so the experience, the physical, the literal subjective experience of one tentacle and the things that it feels and emotions that one tentacle has can be completely different from another tentacle, and it all culminates into one organism.
What the fuck?
And unfortunately for octopus, they have a fairly short lifespan, so they're not able to make civilizations like humans evolved to do. But octopus delineated from the human species. So all these other mammals that delineated from the human species, that all happened 10 million years ago, 20 million years ago, 30 million years ago. Mammals in general arose like, I want to say like 200 million years ago. If you look at their nearest common ancestors with octopus, it was around 750 million years ago.
Shit.
And if you think about that, that just makes them alien, essentially. Because if you look at what an alien is, all an alien is, like, the significance of what an alien is, it doesn't matter the fact that it comes extraterrestrially, that's just happens to be the case. But alien just means it has no relation to human. As far as like, its parents will never match up with our parents. It never crosses our evolutionary tree. And if you look at the fact that octopus delineated from humans 750 million years ago, that's about as close to alien intelligence as you can get. I mean, unless you count AI, because AI also, people say it stands for artificial intelligence, but it's kind of also stands for alien intelligence, because it's intelligent, we know that it's intelligent, but it solves problems in a way that's completely different than how humans solve problems. A neural network and through deep learning, that solves problems in a way that has absolutely no relation to how humans were evolved to solve problems. And so that's by definition an alien type of intelligence. There's multiple types of intelligence. That's one. The way that we solve problems, that's another type of intelligence. The way that octopus solve problems, that's basically another alien type of intelligence. And so the realities for all three, if you're talking objective, who knows? Because how are you gonna put your mind, if you try to think about what an octopus thinks about, if you literally try to think about, you can't even think about what your dog's thinking about, now let alone try to think about what an octopus is thinking about, especially if you know if the octopus is intelligent, because now you know that it's thinking something, and there's something going on in there, but you have no way of even approaching the closest apparatus of what's going on in the brain of an octopus. It could have, you know how we have a wheel of emotions, like a web of emotions?
Yeah.
And people, it's not a small number. The amount of emotions that humans have, I would say it probably nears millions, because there's slight deviations. You know how certain things give off like certain vibes? Like, there's, you know how like sometimes you're watching like TikToks or whatever, and it's like you try to like you get like nostalgic for something you didn't even experience before, and it's like all those little things, those are all technically emotional vectors. I mean, some of them are just really close to each other, so that's why we brought them into different categories of like angry, sad, happy. But the amount of different happinesses is beyond your own comprehension. You just experience them. And the amount of different emotions that something like an octopus can have. So imagine, let's just say for a number that humans have about 1 million emotions. Though it's probably more than that. Let's just say we have about 1 million emotions. And a lot of them, because you're what, 19?
18.
You haven't experienced most of them, and actually even when you die, you're probably not going to have experienced even like a quarter of them. You know, you're gonna experience the emotions that come along with being a person in the 21st century, but you're not gonna know what it feels like. You're not gonna know the emotions that people who were living 10,000 years ago were having when, you know, they saw a giraffe for the first time.
Shit.
You know what I mean? So there's the total amount of emotions that humans can experience, and then inside of that is a much smaller circle of emotions that you've experienced. And a lot of that's obviously, unfortunately, just tied to the society that we live in.
Time period, location.
You don't know what it feels like to
also,
be somebody in like Cuba right now.
Yeah, and people that go in like the military or people that like suffer trauma, like those.
Yeah, each traumatic event for each person feels different.
Yeah.
You know.
And some of those
are different.
Some of those catapult them into different like mental illnesses, which make them feel different things. Like I know.
And so for the reality for somebody who has schizophrenia, it's a lot different.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
And so think about all the emotions that humans can experience, and all the emotions that you experience, and the feelings and the thoughts and everything, and there is a separate circle that doesn't overlap at all. None of it is complementary. None of it is similar, and that's what an octopus feels. That's alien.
Yeah.
By definition, that's alien, because that was 750 million years ago that evolutionary timeline split. Everything it feels now and everything it thinks now, the psychology in its entirety is just different. There's no overlap. There is overlap with us and basically all of the mammals. All the mammals, you know, they feel love and empathy, and you know, we say that they feel all these other things, but who knows what's going on in the mind of an octopus? They have curiosity. We know that.
You think that we'll ever have like some kind of technology that would enable us to feel what an octopus feels, or at least feel at another level? So if we had, let's say, like a Neuralink in our brain, what if it opened us up?
Neuralinked with an octopus?
No, like maybe that, or maybe it enabled us to experience even more emotions on a level that we've never experienced. You know what I mean?
Well,
like what if it opened up those pathways in our brain?
You'd have to retain your memory for you to, because for like that could happen to us. Like that could have already happened to me. But if I didn't have any memory of it happening, then I would still be in the same seat acting like it didn't happen. I could have lived a past life as an octopus and already had all those experiences and went through a whole life of just feeling like an octopus, but if I didn't have the memory to recall what it was. I think the memory is the big thing, because you can't remember not being you. Your memory is bound to a single conscious stream. You know, if that conscious stream ever gets cut, you don't remember the after can't remember the before, and the before can't remember the after. So if your consciousness, if you Neuralink with an octopus and you guys switch places, for example, and then you switch back,
you won't forget. You won't, unless you do it in a way where you keep the memories and possibly experience those memories with feeling.
If its memories work in different ways than our memories work, then you can't.
That's true.
You can't retain the memories, and its memory probably does. not work the same way that our memory does.
Yeah.
Because we already know that a
Honestly.
chimp's memory doesn't work. Because its short-term memory is significantly better than ours. So how are you going to remember having better short-term memory? It's like, you know how those, you know that one episode of SpongeBob where Patrick got like really smart? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like the next episode when he's back to being stupid, he can't remember what it felt like to be smart because his memory doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
almost like you were never smart in the first place.
Yeah. Exactly. That's crazy. Chase, I want to ask you. So, I don't know how religious you are. I want to ask about like if you have a religious perspective on this, because I think, when you think about creation, when God created us, right? Do you think that, because he's explaining this stuff, that like all the animals have different perceptions of reality?
Mm-hmm.
I would think that God would have created us in a way that we would be able to perceive reality in like the way that it's supposed to be perceived. You know what I mean? Like maybe
live
they do,
life how like,
yeah, like maybe they get to the
God
point where
intended.
you know what I mean? Like if
I know what you mean.
If there's octopuses that can see all of this stuff and can perceive, maybe that's too much.
Well,
Maybe that's why they die earlier.
We
Yeah.
know
You know what I
for a
mean?
fact that there are, I forgot what fish, they're not like krill. They might be krill, where they have,
Plankton?
no, I think they're like, there might be krill, or something, there's something that looks like krill. They have, like twice as many rods and cones in their eyes as we do,
Yeah.
and so the amount of colors they could see is just a magnitude more.
Yeah, I
than
think
the
I've heard of
amount
that
we can
too.
see. And so if God intended us to have an objective view on reality, why did he limit the amount of colors that we could see down? Why can't we see in ultraviolet when bees can? And why can't we see in infrared
I think-
when like lions and stuff can?
I think the point is that this is the way that he intended for us to see reality or perceive it. I mean, I don't think he didn't, or we never needed any of that. You know what I mean? Maybe there is more.
I mean, needed is a big word because
it
in the way
implies-
of God, it makes sense because there is a purpose and there's a why. But in
Yeah.
the way of like evolutionary thinking, it also makes sense because we survived this long without having to see an infrared, and without having to see
I
all
see what
these
you
other
mean, yeah.
colors. But
Yeah.
other animals, they have access to those other colors.
They need it because they needed to survive
Yeah.
with it. But
And so regardless, we don't have access to the full reality.
say
We just have access to the reality that we needed to survive.
if we were created in his image, this is probably the way that we were supposed to experience the world around us, the world that he created, and also the way that we were supposed to perceive it. To see like these specific colors, we can see blue, red, green, yellow, all these colors. I just think that's how the human experience was intended. You know what I mean? I don't think there was supposed to be more.
I know what you mean.
Maybe like if you try to experience any more, you might not be able to handle it, or maybe like when people talk about like trying to experience, I don't know, like maybe they're trying to. It sounds like they're trying to be God. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when people talk about like, oh, I want unlimited. I don't want to like say shit about Elon Musk, but like when he talks about Neuralink and having unlimited knowledge and being able to communicate with people, like using your brain and shit,
Yeah.
it sounds like there's gonna be a point where they're just trying to be God.
Is like
they're-
modifying God's creations.
Exactly.
Well, we already modified God's creations. I'm wearing clothes that protect me from the element. If God intended me to be naked and
That's-
cold and hot,
He did, but that was the.
then I changed that. I also
you know
changed my
what I gotta
vision.
say about that, right?
I also
Well,
changed
like, you
my
know what I mean?
vision because I'm wearing glasses. I
When-
can't see perfectly fine, and if God
when-
intended me to not see fine, I just changed that by wearing
I have
glasses.
something to say about this.
Yeah,
I would say, I don't mean to cut you off here, but I would say that, you know, if you look at man versus bird can obviously fly way faster than man can run. but then man designed the bike, and now they can go the same amount of distance and probably just as fast and travel, the same amount. So I think
and
God
a lot faster
intended us
if you
to
just
be-
keep going down the technological
Right.
timeline. We got cars, and then we got planes, now we got rocket ships. If He intended us to stay on this planet, then why are we leaving?
I think the big thing is that God intended us to be builders, engineers. In that engineer, that's just like a general term. Like a philosophical, like a philosopher is like a philosophical engineer. Everybody's an engineer in something.
In some way.
I want to explain. So you mentioned that, like, covering and also with your eyes. So I want to point out the very first story in Genesis. You have Adam and Eve, right? They were both naked. Neither of them had glasses. They literally lived like the perfect life, and they were persuaded by the serpent, which is the embodiment of Satan, right? He convinced one of them to try the apple, which the apple, they eat the apple, and that's a sin against God, right? And that's the very first sin. And after that point, everything, they realized that they're naked, they had to put clothes on. And I think that's when all the obviously, like the Bible says, that's when all the problems started, right?
Yeah.
So maybe, or that is probably when like people started having, number one, bad eyes, stuff like that. They needed to cover themselves because they felt embarrassed.
Well, what about
They start experiencing emotions that they never felt before, such as, number one, embarrassment, number two, their kids. What's it? Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel?
Yeah,
jealousy.
I think it's Cain and Abel, jealousy,
Betrayal.
and then they one of them kills the other one. Stuff like that.
Cain kills Abel.
Social anxiety.
Yeah, they
these
start
things.
experiencing all these negative emotions that nobody in history, there was only two people, but nobody felt before. But the human experience was, we were intended to be more, but it switched when the first sin was committed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like everything changed from that point on.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't think that means that creating Neuralink, for example, because that's just one technology that people use to say that we're challenging God with.
You could.
Because obviously in like the Tower, I think the Tower of Babel is I think people misinterpret it, though I'm not even religious, so I definitely misinterpret it. But because the Tower of Babel is used as almost like a warning to not challenge God. You know Tower of Babel, right?
Yeah, I know the story of the Tower of Babel.
But I think of it more closer to like a metaphor of just human civilization, because the tower isn't a physical tower. Though I mean, in the story, it's a physical tower. But if you extrapolate the idea of the tower without actually taking the embodiment of the tower with it, then you're left with a pretty solid metaphor about what's happened throughout history. And so you have the tower, you're building the tower, and eventually God smites it down, and tower falls apart, and none of the people in the tower, none of the people in the society can understand each other.
Yeah,
they're all speaking gibberish.
Yeah, they're all speaking different languages.
And so I mean, it's a cool story in and of itself, and the reason that's put behind the tower falling apart is that God destroyed it. But if you take the story without the actual tower and just think about it as an analogy, right? It's almost as if you have a society, a civilization, and it keeps growing and growing and growing and expanding its boundaries and winning wars and conquering neighboring tribes and getting bigger and more populous and more dense. And eventually the society ends up collapsing in on itself because we can't effectively run. I mean, look at the Roman Empire. They're the most successful and most populous country or empire for a long time, but you can't, after a certain point, you can't necessarily control a group of people that's that big, even with whatever form of government that they had going on at the time. And so it breaks apart, the tower breaks apart, and then you have different civil wars going on, and eventually through generations these different nations start forming different languages. And if you look at Spain, who used to be part of the Roman Empire, and then you look at Germany, who used to be part of the Roman Empire, they can't understand each other anymore. They're essentially speaking gibberish. So it's the Tower of Babel without actually taking the actual tower with you. It's just an idea of how, and that's happens with every successful civilization throughout human history. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then breaks apart into smaller countries and colonies.
What I want to say is the Tower of Babel, the point was that they were trying to reach heaven.
That's what the Roman Empire was trying to do.
Yeah, so that's probably why they collapsed. No,
but
so
it's just human nature. Because
they're trying to take a shortcut to heaven, and there's not supposed to be a shortcut to heaven. That's what I'm trying to say.
If you look,
we're not intended to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying the story works even if you don't involve God. Because if you look at a group of chimpanzees can self-govern. You got tribes of chimpanzees that can go up to 50 to 100 people, and then after that, the social hierarchy breaks apart because they don't have the cohesion to be able to sustain it. That's God smiting down the chimpanzees for trying to reach heaven on earth. You know what I'm saying? And then
I understand what you're saying, but that's more of like a
people, and because we have the power of communication, prior to the invention of the internet and prior to the invention of written language, we just had spoken language. We were still able to make tribes of thousands of peoples before it self-destructed. And then through the process of written language, the amount of the thousands of peoples turns into millions of peoples before it self-destructed. And now, with the invention of the informational revolution that's happened in the 21st century, in the 20th century, you can realistically, if we restarted with the technologies that we had, we could have had the entire population under one kind of control. You know, we could realistically sustain more than millions of people. We could sustain hundreds of millions of people, which is what we do. And if we get too big, though, if the population, you look at India and you look at China, and they have a population of over 1 billion people. That's more than the population of the planet 2,000 years ago. And they're still one society, but if that gets too big, eventually God's gonna smite it down. But I don't think it's God smiting it down. I think it's the upper limit to what our technology is able to form social cohesion at. And that upper limit keeps changing throughout history because we keep developing new technologies to push it forward. Chimps didn't have anything. That's why they were stuck at 50 to 100. We had spoken language, and that's why I moved to 1,000. Then we got written language, and that's why I got moved to millions. And now we have the internet, and that's why it's at the billion plus that it's at.
I think your perspective is way different from mine, because I'm looking at it from like more of a religious perspective.
No, I get that. I'm just saying it's the same story, but
yeah, you're seeing it from as a metaphor, which I see it sort of like as a metaphorical story where you do have to take a lesson from it, but I do also look at it from a more literal sense in which you're not supposed to try to take a shortcut to heaven. You're not supposed to.
Because I mean,
you know what I mean?
I mean in the way that you don't necessarily. If the story works without God being there, then why do you need God there? You know,
well, God. No,
you know.
The point is that Occam's razor.
It's kind of like, you know how you can make a theory about something and include 5 variables, but the theory works with 4.
Yeah.
Then just use the theory that has 4 variables. That's sort of what I'm suggesting with this. If we have a theory about human nature and it works without God, which is the extra variable, then why do you need the extra variable in there if it still works without it?
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that, low-key. Like, you're kind of asking me.
That's why we're looking for a theory of everything, you know, in physics, where they're trying to combine quantum relativity or general relativity and quantum mechanics.
Yeah, I've heard
and
that.
A bunch of, like, we've had other theories in the past that are more complicated, and that's why a lot of people don't like string theory, because people say it's overly complicated. You need, depending on your version of string theory, you need 11 or 13 or 15 or 17 or 30 some dimensions for it to work, spatial dimensions, and people don't like the amount of variables that go into it. And then if you had the idea of string theory and then you add God on top of it, if they didn't like the idea when it had 32 dimensions, why would they like it if they had 33? So if they didn't like it with 32, then why would they like it if you had 32 plus God?
I'm gonna say I believe that God exists because I've seen him.
I mean, no, that's good. I mean,
I
personal opinion is
I
everything.
understand your perspective. It's very like you're looking at the variables and you don't like, you can explain things without him, but I don't know how to explain.
Because how does Occam's? I don't want to get like too much into it.
I know Occam's razor, the most likely. Isn't it the
It's
most
the
likely?
the simplest explanation that provides the full reasoning
is the most likely.
Is the most likely.
Yeah. My explanation would be God, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because isn't it just material reasoning on top of material reasoning on top of material reasoning? Because you can have a million material reasonings for why you think civilization is the way it is today, Big Bang. You can have a million theories, you can have a million things, but eventually you run out of material things.
And when you mentioned the Big Bang, who caused that?
And
there's got to be a Big Bang, you know what I mean? And there's plenty of...
They're assuming that cause and effect still works the same way. There's actually there's a very funky theory that I saw about causality, and it's called reverse causality. And it's the idea where you have... This is a little bit in depth, so I'm like try to make it like super like easy to explain. I don't know if I'm gonna do a good job, but so right now in quantum mechanics, if you have there's entanglement where information, essentially it looks like information can go from one particle to another particle that's far away in space, where it travels instantaneously the information, and that shouldn't traditionally be possible. Information can only travel at the speed of light. So how does it happen? So one idea is like just the typical entanglement, where somehow there's like a communication, like some sort of switch, some sort of string connecting the two particles, where when you examine the spin of one, then you automatically know the spin of the other one. Because right now you could look at the spin of a particle on one and the other one is going to be the opposite, because that's conservation of momentum. But there was an idea that I saw called reverse causality, where back when the particles were a lot closer together, that only happens if they were close together and then they go far apart, and then you measure them. But the idea is when they were close together, they already them figuring out what their spins were when they're far apart sent a signal back through time, which is the reverse causality. The effect, or traditionally causes effect, but in this case the effect led to the cause, where if you go back in time, that's when they actually communicated. So you knowing their spins in the future allows you to know their spins in the past. And so for you to assume that the Big Bang has a cause is an assumption, because you don't know if it had a cause or if it is the effect.
Yeah.
If the information traveled backwards through time, I don't know. It's really complicated. I already forgot what the hell I was talking about.
No,
but I'm just saying there's a lot of little things that we take for granted in terms of reasoning that you have to open your perspective about.
I know what you mean. So when you're looking at the universe and everything, and it was created by the Big Bang, we don't know because no one was there. Nobody we there's no way for us to perceive.
There's no way for us to know.
To know, like, to perceive how, like, there, for anyone to know, like, there couldn't have been, like,
The earliest,
people think that, like, there couldn't have been anything before that. What I'm saying is,
the
just like how you're saying with
record that we
Occam's
have-
razor, the most likely is that there was somebody that caused it. You know what I mean? Like, there was a flip and a switch, and then all of a sudden there was light. There was the heavens and the earth.
God smite, maybe?
I don't know.
Because well, okay, so it just depends on how you, because I don't know if you consider God one variable, because God he could be a thing depending on how you look at it, but you also assuming God's intelligent and God's omnipotent and God wanted to, and God, there's a lot more variables. God isn't just one variable. God is who knows how many variables.
If anything, he's all variables because he's everywhere all at once.
So you have to
Every
assume
variable.
a potential infinite amount of variables when you're assuming God.
Yes.
So can you go without having to assume a potential infinite amount of variables?
Do you think it's more likely? Do you think it's more? Okay. Do you think that it's more likely that there is a God, or that there's not? And
I just think
would
I
it
think
be?
it just depends on how you define God. Because a lot of people define God, like, I know if you
Judeo-Christian way.
That's a Judeo-Christian way.
Islamic
but
way.
in Hindu, in Hinduism, you know, we're all kind of God. You know, they use the example of life being sort of like a play, like it's just staged. Where say for example you're God.
Like a Truman Show.
Not like a Truman Show. More like it's you pay to go be convinced that the play is real, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to a really good play. So hold on. Say for example you're God, and you're able to do everything you want, and you're able to do. Well, this is assuming God has desires and human emotions, which he probably doesn't, if we're looking at it from a Judeo-Christian perspective. But we'll just roll with it. You're God, and you have an eternity to do an eternity amount of things, which is a little bit more of a reasonable thing to say. One of the things that you might want to do is pretend that you don't have an eternity to do an eternity amount of things, because now it causes you to have emotions and feelings and things that you can't have when you know you have an eternity to do an eternal amount of things. So you close your eyes and you put yourself in the body of a human and you pretend you're human for 80 years and you go along with it, and the ups and the downs and the struggles and the love and the fear and the madness that goes along with being a human for the duration of a human life. And then when you die, you wake up from the play and you realize, you're like, wow, that was a great show. You know, the credits roll and you're like, that was great. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. It's just like going to pay to go see a great play, and you get convinced by the actors because the actors are so real, and you get convinced by the emotions, and you're on the edge of your seat, and you don't know what's gonna happen, and then it ends, and then you go back to your reality, and you're like, wow, that was crazy. I was so into that. It almost convinced me that it was real. And that's probably what he's thinking, is that he's doing this to almost convince him that it's real. But that's just one explanation of what God could be. You have the Judeo-Christian view of what God could be, and then you have Buddhist ways of thinking about
Jesus
God could be.
and like
where you
coming
just
back
reach
as God or whatever, resurrection, you know, after being crucified.
Yeah, there's so many different perspectives. I do want to wrap this up. Do you guys have any advice to give to people, whether it's with running, towards their future values, well, anything either of you got? I was not looking, but I'd advise my viewers not to have their nipples out while the podcast. Yeah, but yeah, if you guys have any advice to give to whoever's watching this episode, my viewers.
Do you have anything?
Isaac gave me some. I don't know. I was just thinking about this because we started going into it a little bit. But Isaac Johnson, Big Isaac, he gave Jeet some good advice, and I was around there to hear. He was like, "A closed mind is the most expensive thing in this world." So.
That's pretty good stuff.
So just be open, man, to not only experiences, but be open to other people's struggles, be understanding, have empathy, have sympathy, and just don't try to get too closed-minded and too focused on what you're trying to do, because a lot of times a lot of people need more time to just sit back and realize that it's not that serious, that we're all just humans, and we're just trying to breathe, we're just trying to get through this, and we all essentially have the same struggles. We're just trying to love and be loved. At the end of the day, that's all that we want. So if that's all that other people want, then give it out. Love people, because it's really not that hard, but sometimes you forget. It's pretty easy to forget, especially in our world today, in our society, where it's very materialistic and very centric on the market and like making money and hustle, capitalism, and all the sort of stuff that distracts you from the fact, people say, oh, I don't know, it gets complicated, it gets heavy waters, and your mind gets occupied with things that it shouldn't, that really aren't important to occupy it. So don't let it distract you.
Of course, yep.
Socrates had a quote, the unexamined life isn't worth living. And I would totally encourage people to educate yourself on certain things, because there's a lot of things that we think we're educated on, or that we think we know a lot about, but we really don't in reality. And when I was talking to you earlier, Elijah, about like classes and stuff, and you don't really figure out what you want to do until you do it. And I think just have more experiences, learn more, try not to be prejudice, against other people. Try to have an understanding for why they believe in what they believe. That's why sometimes I'll read the Quran or whatever, even listen to it on Spotify. There's an English translation, and I'll just listen to it.
That's cool as hell.
And I'm not Islamic, I'm not a Muslim, but I listen to it because it's interesting to hear about beliefs of other religions. And I think just having an open mind and understanding is the most important thing for becoming the best that you want to be, because if you close your mind off to certain things, you're closing opportunities. You're closing certain doors.
Yeah, you're missing out on a potentially better life.
Right. Who knows what you could be with. You could be this far away from information that changes your life completely, and I think that's so huge. It's just listen to people as much as you can with an open mind, understand where they're coming from, form your own perspectives from that, but just be understanding, so yeah, kind of. I guess it's kind of latching on, what Kavin was saying earlier, but it's definitely just have an understanding, I guess.
Especially with this episode, I kind of just sat back and took a lot of stuff in that you guys were saying, because there's a level of wisdom that both of you have that I just want to take in and see what I can see how I can implement that to myself, you know what I mean? Yeah, I've definitely had super smart people in the past get on the podcast and just let them talk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a good experience.
Let 'em cook.
It's a good experience. I wanna do a quick summary of what we went over, just for the viewers to like look back.
Mhm.
So we went over like running over the summer. We went over like basically you guys went over since high school, like what you're running and injuries and college and basic training and all of that stuff you guys went over.
A lot of running.
And then
Yeah, it was.
and then we went even further back to like your guys' childhood, your interests, like video games, you with football, and then eventually as you guys got older, you guys got into running, and then we went into high school. We talked about like your favorite memories. We talked about the cherry incident and all that, which it's always
Oh yeah, dude.
it was a
It's
very
a classic.
It's a
funny classic moment. I knew I had to bring that up, especially since I was having the cherry thrower himself on this podcast. So
Yes, sir.
then we went into like how you guys plan your future, what you guys value. I think both of you had very interesting inputs as far as that. Definitely picked my brain, honestly. And then we talked about how we got into what was the rabbit hole we went into?
It was like reality, I guess.
Yeah, that was after.
Yeah.
We went into one before that though.
Did we?
I think it was
I thought
just
that it
I think
started
it was just those values.
Yeah,
Because you then
values
opened
and
up to like
stuff, yeah.
existentialism.
Yeah. We went into that eventually. Yeah, you talked about your octopus thing.
Yeah, honors.
And then eventually I brought it back to a more religious perspective, and we were talking about the Tower of Babel and all the variables.
Yeah, that was fun.
Which was, I think, you brought a very interesting perspective. Which, I mean, anyone can learn from. So hopefully whoever's listening also picks up on some of the wisdom and all the interesting perspectives that were spread through this podcast episode. So I want to thank you guys for like sharing that. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
No,
yeah.
thank you, dude.
Thank both of
Thank you
guys.
for the opportunity.
Sir.
That was a
No
great. That was
problem.
a great conversation.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Goal Swell podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to drop a like. And if you plan on listening to any future episodes, make sure to subscribe and click that notification button.